The reports that shocked the world of football this weekend have been confirmed. Neymar to Saudi Arabia. I have some thoughts, so let's discuss. My name is Marcio, and welcome to CO Sports, a channel where we'll be talking about world football, basketball, Formula One, all of it. Stay tuned, like and subscribe. All right, so let's get into it. So first, the facts. So Neymar signed for Al-Hilal for a transfer fee of like 90 million euros with a salary package worth like 300 million euros with add-ons that can go up to like 400 million. According to reports, I don't know what's real and what's not. All I know is it's a whole lot of money. So how did we get to this point, really? So cast your minds back to 2017. Messi, Neymar, Suarez, all in Barcelona, having a good old time, winning La Liga titles, battling for the Champions League. It was all great. Up until La Remontada, if that's how you want to call it. PSG faced off against Barcelona. We all know what happens. PSG wins the first game like 4-0. And then in the second game, Neymar has one of the great performances in the history of the Champions League. And all anybody can talk about after that game was Messi. He was in the cover of all the magazines. It was all about Messi. And Neymar at that point in time, he thought to himself, I can lead a team to the Champions League. I need my own team. And in that summer, PSG paid the fee of 222 million euros, and Neymar was in France. Thus began 6 tumultuous years of Neymar at PSG. It was marred with a lot of controversy, a lot of injuries, and as we all know, a lot of disappointment. So we can all remember that as soon as 2018, Neymar had already asked to go back to Barcelona. But at that point, he was in too deep. He was committed. PSG weren't going to let him go back. He battled through it, but at that point, there was a rift between Neymar and the fans that was irreversible. From that point on, the PSG Ultras were on top of him all the time. And with the French starlet, Kylian Mbappe, on the team as well, it was all downhill from there. And even though his ultimate goal at PSG was to bring them relevance and to bring them their Champions League title, it never really happened. He got close in 2020 with the final against Bayern Munich, but they ended up losing, and that was the only time PSG made it to the finals with Neymar. I'm assuming that after that, Neymar probably felt like, okay, we have something. I can actually get this team to win the Champions League. Neymar probably felt like because they went to the finals, it makes sense to re-sign. Because aside from that, I really can't see any reason why he would agree to do such a thing. But he did. Ultimately, he extended his contract till 2025. And then a year later in 2022, he extended it up to 2027. And I feel like those were two critical mistakes that kind of led to us being where we are today. So this summer has been marred with speculations about Kylian Mbappe leaving PSG and going to Real Madrid. Everybody, including myself, assumed that this was Neymar's time to lead the team, and now that Mbappe is probably going to be gone, but that wasn't the case. Neymar had to recover from an injury following his return to PSG after the World Cup, and he did an interview with a famous Brazilian YouTuber where he stated that regardless of if there's love or if there isn't love, he's going to stay at PSG. And I truly believe that that would be the case. But it seems as though PSG's priority has been and always will be Kylian Mbappe. And with Mbappe and his, let's just face it, his ego, you can't have Neymar on the team with him. He has to be the guy. And as a way to entice him to stay, it seems they had to kick Neymar out. So for this coming season, the 2023-24 season, PSG's new coach is Luis Enrique, who used to coach Neymar back in Barcelona during his MSN days. I assumed that that was a great sign for Neymar and that he'd want to keep Neymar on the team. But recent reports suggest that he actually never wanted Neymar and he'd be okay with him not being a part of the project. But with such an injury-riddled past 6 years, Neymar had no real market in Europe. He played a mere 57% of all the possible games for PSG in these last 6 years. It's a cliche in sports, but the best ability is availability. And that really rings true with Neymar, and that's reflected in his lack of a market in Europe. There were reports that he would go back to Barcelona, but the problem with that is that Barcelona have no money. Because La Liga's fair play rules are so strict, Barcelona is really limited on how much money they can spend, And because they're irresponsible financially, they really have no money. So they can't afford to pay a transfer fee for Neymar. And because of that, the only way Neymar could have made his way to Barcelona would be on a free. And for that to happen, he would have to run the risk of staying throughout the entire transfer window in hopes that they can negotiate something with PSG. But in reality, that's not a real option. That's not possible at this moment in time. At least that's what I think. So ultimately, Neymar was left with two choices: stay at PSG and rot on the bench potentially, or go somewhere else. And the only somewhere else really, it was Saudi Arabia. As much as it sucks as a fan of the sport, as a fan of Neymar, to see him outside of Europe, outside of the elite upper echelon of world football, he didn't really have much of a market anywhere else. I think PSG were very smart in waiting for the American transfer window and the Brazilian transfer windows to close before announcing to Neymar that he's not a part of their plans. I sense some malintent in there, especially now that they're reintegrating Mbappe into the team. I believe PSG really wanted to take as much money as they possibly could, knowing that that money would come from Saudi Arabia, and they didn't really care what would happen to Neymar in his career. Their relationship was finished. So I see Neymar's career as being a drama in three acts, and I think this is the beginning of the third act. His football, him playing football in Saudi Arabia. I do believe and really hope that he sticks to the 2-year contract, because ultimately Neymar's the kind of guy who enjoys gambling. He likes to drink. He enjoys his little poker, likes women. In Saudi Arabia, it's a bit more restrictive on what he can do. I'm not too familiar with their laws over there, but I'm pretty sure alcohol isn't something that's necessarily, allowed. So I don't know how Neymar will enjoy the lifestyle in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, when he's not playing, when he's not training, he can just fly out anywhere. He's a multimillionaire, possibly a billionaire. He can go anywhere to have some fun, but living in Saudi Arabia doesn't really translate very well for a Brazilian, I think, right? So I do believe that he will play out his 2-year contract. And afterwards, I don't really know if he'll have a market in Europe. I still think it would be really hard for him to go back, even though I believe to this day, you can't name 5 players that are better than him in world football. I think over the last 6 years, that's been the case, and that hasn't changed. Even if he stays at Saudi Arabia for 2 years, he's not going to forget how to play football. That's just not how it works. But the problem is, and always has been, his injury history. I mean, look back to 2014 at the World Cup. 2018 at the World Cup, 2022 at the World Cup, the last 6 years at PSG. That's really, unfortunately, Neymar's legacy. Neymar to me is, the most talented Brazilian player that I've had the privilege of watching. And that's by a significant margin. I'm sorry, Vini. It's just the truth. And it's a shame to see that his legacy will be that of someone who's injury prone. But as of this third act, that's what it is. So if you want to be optimistic, he can enjoy 2 years of a less physically demanding league with less wear and tear on his body, while potentially winning Copa America next year, potentially winning the Club World Cup the year after, and then going back to Europe. I don't see that happening. I think more realistically, he'll go back to Brazil or the MLS, which again, it's not what I want to see. I don't think it's what anyone who's a fan of the sport really wants to see. For his talent, he could do better. But I think it's realistic that he'll probably go back to Brazil or to the MLS at the end of his contract with Saudi Arabia. But I don't know. I really do hope that the reports of him wanting to go back to Europe are real, and that he'll go back to Barcelona and show the world that he is one of the most talented footballers in the history of the game, period. And I think his numbers reflect that. But ultimately, Neymar is a pretty unpredictable guy, and he could just re-sign for Al-Hilal for 10 years, make $1 trillion, and that wouldn't be too surprising. That's not what I'm expecting, but who knows with this guy, honestly. So these are my thoughts of Neymar's transfer to Al-Hilal. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. And yeah.